What up guys, SuperMetal983 here to bring you another CD review. And I've got a really riffing album for you to check out, especially if you're into your metalcore. This is so far my metalcore record of 2018. I've been so looking forward to this album, and now that it's here, I'm loving it so much. But yeah, this is what I'm going to be reviewing for you today. Yeah, this is the new album from the band Bleed From Within, entitled Era. This is released under Century Media Records. Now, if you're from the UK, I'd be very surprised if you haven't heard of Bleed From Within, but if you haven't, I'm going to enlighten you a little bit. But they are a 5-piece metalcore band hailing from Scotland, I believe Glasgow, if I'm not mistaken. And, well, Bleed From Within, they're, as I said, a metalcore band, but they used to be a kind of melodic deathcore band back in the early days with their debut album, which is this one called Humanity, which this album is still one of my favourite albums ever to have ever come out in the whole UK metal in general, because this album is an absolute riffer. Some great tracks on here. My personal favourite tracks are Damnation and Servants of Divinity, and Servants of Divinity was the first song that exposed us to the band and started us on this road to loving the band. So yeah, great album. If you haven't heard it, make sure you check it out. And then the following year, so that came out in 2009, I believe. The following year, 2010, they released an album called Empire, which still need to pick up a copy of that at some point. I know it's on Discogs quite a lot, so I will pick it up eventually. But that album, for all it's probably my least favourite of their discography, it is still a very solid album. Definitely something that I do want to get in my discography. But that one, they started to go a little bit less, you could say a little bit more metalcore oriented than deathcore, but they still had the elements that I loved from Humanity on there. And then in 2000, I believe, 2013, yeah, 2013 they released, which was my favourite album, spoiler alert, their album Uprising. Now this album, to me anyway, was an absolutely amazing album when I first heard it. It didn't appear in my top albums list of 2013, unfortunately, because I kind of forgot about it, I'm not going to lie. But anyway, this album still to me is an absolute riffer album, and still one of the best of that year, and definitely one of my personal favourites in the whole UK metalcore, world. And if you haven't heard this album, make sure you check it out. It's an absolute riffer, and this was kind of the dawning of the new Bleed From Within, a more heavier, groovier, kind of groove metal orientated style of metalcore sort of style, more riffier and just punchy, still punchy as fuck. And this one was definitely the dawning, if you ask me. And now we get 5 years later the arrival of their new album, Era. Now this album has obviously been one of the most anticipated albums of 2018 for me, along with the likes of Ingested, for example. This is up there as being one of the big dogs that I was looking forward to. And did it disappoint? In my personal opinion, nope, not even slightly, because as I said, this is so far my metalcore record of 2018, and something that I knew was going to be an absolute riffer, but it added a lot more elements to the Bleed From Within sound that I felt I knew was going to happen, and I think a lot of people sort of suspected it was going to happen. And quite frankly, it did happen. And that was, they've started to introduce a lot more melodic passages and a bit more of a sing-along kind of vibe. It kind of puts us in mind, personally, of a bit of Trivium's In Waves album, that kind of riffier, heavier sort of style, but then mixing maybe a little bit with Parkway Drive. I'd definitely say, if you're a fan of any era of Parkway Drive, you'll find something to love about this album, because I think it takes elements from all eras of Parkway Drive. But in my opinion, the production value and the way this album makes me feel kind of puts me in mind of Alive or Just Break Them by Killswitch Engage. I kind of detect that kind of influence in it, but I definitely detect more so a kind of Parkway Drive, Trivium, I would say, mid-era Trivium, when they were starting to go a bit metalcore, like In Waves, Vengeance Falls, and maybe even to an extent the new album a lot. I definitely hear a lot of that. It definitely takes the element, they still keeps the elements and the the overall sound that I loved from Uprising, with the whole riffy, gritty attack going for it, and headbangable, as if groove metal kind of influence in there, but still keeps a lot of intensity, but it's a lot more of a sing-along and a more of an epic atmosphere overall to add to the overall sound of this album in comparison to Uprising, if you ask me personally. It just adds that more epicness and a bit more overall hugeness to the overall sound of it. Drum work, absolutely fantastic on this album. Very well creative drum work on there. The one thing that I did quite enjoy about this album's overall drum production was the snare on this album. In my personal opinion, I don't know if anyone else that listens to this album kind of I detect a kind of like Chris Adler kind of snare on there. It's quite poppy, it feels like a small snare, just like pop. It really just sounds like that, and I thought it really added and cut through the mix very finely and very, it just added a lot more to it, and I thought it was kind of a unique factor to have. I thought, you've always got these like massive like, what's the word, snares that just, you whack it and you can hear it just echoing throughout the overall sound of this album. This is just snappy, very snappy snare, and I think it really adds to the album. And it's obviously kind of a signature kind of feature to this album, if you ask me. But like I said about the riff work is overall very heavy, chunky, very clean production. I'd have to say it's very chunky and beefy sounding, but it's very clean, very crisp, and quite it's still very riffy and very impactful, and it does create the intensity that you need, but it kind of feels quite soothing to listen to and very uplifting in an extent, because it really does put a smile on your face. This album, it put a smile on my face and made my hair stand on end, and if an album can do that, it's definitely worth talking about, and hence why I'm doing a review. And make sure you check it out. I know we're not even near the end of the review, but yeah, just make sure you check this album out. But yeah, it's definitely a more melodic passage you got. There's a lot more elements, like the Killswitch Engagey kind of parts that I was on about, was and also in an extent Trivium Power Drive, like the melodic passages over the heavy chuggy riffs always adds a lot to me, and melodic metalcore has needed something like this, if you ask me. I definitely pigeonhole it into melodic metalcore, so if you're into that sort of stuff, it obviously doesn't have which I'll get the vocals in a second before I digress onto there, but yeah, the guitar tones are very thick sounding and very punchy, but still, they're not raw, they're just very clean, but still create a lot of chunkiness and beefiness behind it, and the riff work is just, this whole album itself is just a riffer of an album. It just makes you an headbanger. It's literally a headbanger's ball listening to this album. If you haven't heard it, you need to hear it. And because I digressed, now we'll get onto the vocals, which, in my opinion, have improved so much and added so much, and this is what creates a lot of epic atmospheres, if you ask me. And the perfect introduction to that comes with the song Clarity. Sorry, my bad. But Clarity, wow, what an introduction. Those powerful vocals, and they kind of like half screamed a little bit on some elements. They kind of put in mind of Sam Carter from Architects, not as like high pitched or screamy in an extent. That's not an insult, I might as well add, so don't think that, please. But yeah, they're just so powerful, epic, but there's like those half scream kind of like lows, but then underneath you can hear the majestic cleans underneath. And I don't know don't know why my camera's going out of focus, as usual. But anyway, but yeah, I don't know who does the cleans on this album, but the clean vocals underneath just add so much to those overall choruses to make them sound huge, massive, majestic, and overall just epic. It sounds epic as hell, this album, if you ask me. I think it's definitely, personally, the best vocal performance that I've heard from Bleed From Within. Like, the last album was easily my favourite. The emotion that was on... Ooh, losing me fucking balance. But the emotion was there and the power was there. But this one has, like, amplified that. This one has, like, amplified that up by 1,000 and made it more majestic and just more... Sorry, not majestic. Majesty-like and just overall epic, if you ask me. This is easily going to go down in history as one of the best UK metalcore records, if you ask me, and definitely one of my favourites of 2018 so far. I've listened to quite a few metalcore records this year, and last year there wasn't an awful lot that I could have said, wow. Like, if I'm not mistaken, from your top albums, the best metalcore release was While She Sleeps, You Are We. I think I prefer this one to You Are We, and I think this one's going to be high up on the list come year's end. This is absolutely amazing. I just love the overall evolution that Bleed From Within's gone through, from Humanity to Empire to Uprising and their EP in between, Deathwalk, if I'm not mistaken. The overall evolution and progression that this band has gone through to arrive at this is just absolutely amazing. This is easily one of the best metalcore releases of 2018 that I've heard. In fact, I think it's the best metalcore release. So if you haven't heard this album, make sure you do. It is an absolute ripper of an album. Very melodic, majestic, but then so powerful, with great lyrics, great vocal performance, and quite frankly, I'm going to class this as kind of like a comeback album for this band, and I think it's absolutely amazing. So make sure you check out Bleed From Within with their new album, Era, released on Century Media Records. And because I've complimented so much in this review, I'm going to give it a 1 out of 10. No, I'm fucking joking. This is easily getting a 10 out of 10. Absolutely fucking amazing album. And you just need to hear the Scottish metalcore icons are back, and they are back with a vengeance. This album is amazing. I've got for tracks you just need to check out the song Clarity, as well as Crown of Misery, Afterlife, Shiver. That is one of my favourite songs. Gatekeeper, Bed of Snakes, I Am Oblivion Part 2, which is obviously a follow-up to a track on this album. And, what was the song? State Decay, which is a bonus track on this one, which is obviously the HMV exclusive, which I had to keep that sticker on because why not? But yeah, I might as well also, I've got my girlfriend in this album. She wasn't massively keen on the last album, even though I told her to check it out afterwards and she liked it. But I told her to check this right, she loved it. So yeah, we've been listening to that quite a lot lately. So yeah, make sure you check out Bleed From Within's new album, Era, released on the Century Media Records. And I'll see you until the next video. And remember, stay metal, and I'll see you later.